Hey, hello everybody, Disciple here with Overwatch Curios. Now I had an awesome time at BlizzCon, and the best time of all was definitely getting the chance to try out MOIRA, the newest support added to the game. Fortunately enough, BlizzCon once again delivered and gave us an awesome new character that is going to be released shortly, or has been released depending on how long it takes me to edit this video after recording. Now, interestingly enough, MOIRA was the first post-launch hero with no real news of development prior to release. While we know the Overwatch team is constantly working on new hero concepts to be fleshed out and added to the game in a continuous cycle, every other hero added since release so far has been pretty telegraphed in terms of their coming. For example, rumors of a sniper support character have been swirling around the community for a while prior to Ana's release. On top of that, people were interested in learning more of the story of Pharah's mother, who quite obviously played an important role in Overwatch but had gone unmentioned by the team in any manner thus far. In fact, people initially thought it was possible that Sombra, who had been hinted at, could in fact be Pharah's mother until we learned that her name was Ana. After Ana's release, Blizzard would begin an ARG centered around the release of Sombra, as the community as a whole knew that she was coming. If you were around at the time, and especially if you participated in the ARG yourself, then you might be skeptical of Blizzard ever trying an ARG again, since it was probably the worst thing that they've ever done. They essentially gave us a few hints here and there every once in a while that led to nothing, and then they just released her several months later. Now, again, Orisa would start to be hinted at as the next hero released. Introductory posts led people to believe that perhaps Doomfist was coming, only to throw them a curveball by releasing Orisa instead. However, Doomfist was shortly behind as the next hero released. As one of the most desired characters since the mention of his name in the original announcement trailer, players clamored for a playable Doomfist and even pushed to see Terry Crews himself voice the character. So here we are in the wake of BlizzCon 2017, having just been given a new hero which, prior to the event, had virtually no notice or mention by the team at all. While there was no real social media teasing or community involvement in the release, and while not entirely surprising coming from BlizzCon, the community genuinely had no idea what to expect from the Overwatch team. However, it turns out that MOIRA had been in development for quite a while, much like all of the heroes the Blizzard team adds to the game. In fact, there's an image in the Doomfist Masquerade comic towards the end, where MOIRA can actually be seen sitting at a table in what is presumably a Talon meeting room, so the evidence was there in the background. So anyway, in this video we'll take a look at her development process and discuss what exactly MOIRA could have been. Now, when it came to developing MOIRA, the Overwatch team knew that they wanted to release a new hero for the game. This is something players have been asking for since basically the release of Ana, because fleshing out and balancing a variety of different healers, much like the team has done with both the DPS and the tank role, is of utmost importance for both players and the developers. And having a little bit more variety in the healer base is going to be really nice for anyone who plays healer or who tries to flex to it whenever they can, but get bored of the same old choices. MOIRA's early ideation began with a combination of both gameplay and story ideas, stemming from strong player demand for a new support healer. Their initial goal was to introduce a shady, morally ambiguous healer to contrast with the existing benevolent healer archetypes already in the game. If you take a look at the current roster of supports, they all can be classified as good characters. You have the angelic Mercy, the war hero Ana, the monk Zenyatta, the freedom-fighting upbeat DJ of Lucio. So story development essentially pushed the team into developing a hero that could fit into the darker side of the Overwatch world, and Talon was a perfect place for that. Some of MOIRA's earliest concept art featured her wearing robotic tentacles attached to her armor, much like Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man. However, as the team continued development on MOIRA, they found that incorporating these tentacles into the actual gameplay became a pretty difficult task. Since they were essentially melee-based weapons, it created a problem of placing a healing character on the front lines of combat. From there, the team looked into giving her a two-handed cannon that would really dive into the science theme behind MOIRA as a character. However, in actuality, the visual design seemed a bit too close to Zarya for the team to continue exploring the cannon as an option for a weapon. The team began to pull away from heavy weaponry for the character and instead explored much lighter weaponry instead. They focused on retaining her gaunt, androgynous appearance, with several concepts that wielded various clawed gloves and gauntlets, as well as a concept inspired by Sombra's original Omniblade design, incorporating baggy sleeves and throwable syringes. The latter design also introduced the idea of a duality between her left and right hands, with one used to deal damage and the other to heal. The elements of these various concepts were pulled together to create her final design, incorporating the earlier scientific details with a color-changing liquid to differentiate her healing and damage-dealing abilities. That theme of duality became the focus of Moira's development. In fact, early on, Moira's original design was much different in terms of gameplay than it is today. She originally began as a much tankier support class with a large health pool, who instead focused on consuming life from enemies and, in turn, using her own health to heal allies. This design draws some heavy parallels to that of a warlock in Warcraft, providing this gameplay theme of strength through pain. However, as the team began playtesting this earliest design, there were some pretty glaring issues with getting it to work properly. First of all, it became problematic for the team to balance from a numbers standpoint. Finding an appropriate health pool that made her feel flexible in situations while under fire, and also being able to perform her job as a healer while also still feeling potentially killable for the enemy team, was really difficult. On top of that, it also creates a dynamic that can still be seen today, although to a lesser extent. Moira is quite able to deal with enemy flanks on a level that many other supports can't, due in part to her ability to sustain while being attacked in a one-on-one setting. In her previous form, where she was entirely dependent on leeching life to fuel her support capabilities, this leech was even more powerful and created a design conundrum for the team, where they had to ask why stop attacking at all and heal because she's actually just a really strong attacker. They eventually had to move the healing to a charge system since operating off her own health was just unbalanceable. Her ultimate also saw some pretty different prototypes before Coalescence would become what it was today. Now, the first form of Moira's ultimate was a vastly superior and probably OP version of what she has in-game today. During this first ultimate, not only did she have a beam similar to what Coalescence is now, but she also entered a sort of hyper mode where all of her abilities would have wildly shorter cooldowns. Looking back at it today, it seems pretty likely that when the team decided to focus solely on the beam mechanic of the ability, that they instead decided to take the other aspects of this ability and use them for the newest iteration of Mercy's ultimate, Valkyrie. The team instead decided to focus on the singular concept of the beam, and how exactly it could feel impactful and, for lack of better words, ultimate for players to use in-game. It also fit perfectly with the continuing theme of duality in that it could heal allies and damage enemies at the same time, and it creates interesting choices on where to position and how exactly to angle your beam to either do the most damage or do the most healing, or choose between one or the other. Moira's orb is another ability that would also take some dialing in. In the first iteration, the orb would simply heal allies with no option to deal damage at all. Furthermore, it also didn't have the ability to bounce off of surfaces at first, meaning that it was just a simple linear shot that you would cast to provide some additional healing to teammates in a time of need. However, having the technology to add a bouncing mechanic, the team decided it could be a great option to enable the orb to bounce as well. This meant that Moira became even more powerful in confined spaces, where all of her abilities and attacks could affect multiple targets at the same time. The decision to add the damage option for her orb opened up an avenue of fun and on-the-fly decision-making for Moira, which is a recurring theme in her gameplay and fits pretty naturally with the character. Using the orb with a shared cooldown now means that Moira has to decide whether it's more important to provide additional sustain to her allies, or instead to try and provide additional damage to eliminate some key targets, as well as help generate ultimate charge more quickly than she could with the healing version. Moira is a product of fan outreach for a specific type of hero, and the Overwatch team certainly delivered on all fronts there. From her gameplay to her role and story within the world, Overwatch has a brilliantly designed hero to fill some of the gaps in the current lineup of heroes within the game. Players wanted a new healer? Check. They wanted an evil healer? Check. They wanted a fiery redhead who could deliver some good ol' Irish sass? Well, I wanted that at least, so let's call it a check. Now, with a kit designed around the constant on-the-fly decision-making, Moira looks to be a pretty high skill cap support with the ability to completely dictate the pace of a match when played appropriately, and the dual concept of her abilities and attacks means that she's always in a position to contribute in some manner, whether offensively through damage or through the support of her healing powers, or if you're like me, diving into the backline and dying quickly after you realize that you're not actually a flanker. Now, I look forward to seeing what exactly the Overwatch community can do with Moira and how exactly she might end up impacting the meta of the game when she's fully released. Now, if you happen to be new here, consider subscribing to the channel to keep up to date with all of our newest content, since we have so much awesome new stuff straight from BlizzCon. And if you are here for the next video, I'll see you then, and if not, thanks for coming. Peace.